When you're doing appraisals, basically you're managing people's expectations about what they have or what they don't have. Like they'll have a ring and, their great grandmother brought it over from wherever and it's been in the family for 1,000 years and everybody told them it was this priceless emerald and it's a piece of glass. As women or just anybody who is not part of a majority population, people are going to question your
expertise,
your expertise,
right?
They're going to question. I'm almost like a unicorn, which I that's fine. Like I own that, and I know that I'm in a space that's not something that people are used to, but that's not my problem, and so I will not shrink myself or apologize for my presence. What I'm there to do is represent, and I'm there to give you an experience and something to walk away with. And just knowing that you belong there, and if other people are uncomfortable with your presence, you have to stick it out. You're making a difference, you're representing, you're changing people's perception of what it's like to see someone like yourself in this space. And it's important to stay there and take up your space in that area.
So today we are with Adrianne Sanogo. She is a gemologist and also works at University of Pennsylvania. So she has 2 jobs. Being a gemologist is kind of a second career for her. Adrianne, I just want to know a little bit more about how you landed into becoming a gemologist and going through the course at GIA.
Sure. Thank you, Andrea, for that introduction. So the gemology career was actually, I don't want to say by accident, but I did come across gemology not knowing that you could have a career in that field. I thought that people who dealt with gems and jewelry were just part of a family that did that, because in Philadelphia, it's a lot of family legacy-owned jewelry businesses. So that was my understanding of what the business was. So after surviving cancer and getting a second chance, I decided to do something that I've always wanted to do. And when I discovered that GIA had a learning institution, I enrolled in their distance learning diamond course, which was my first course. And that was the only one I was going to take, quite frankly. But then I was hooked. So I started taking more and more courses. And then after I won the inaugural Cindy Edelstein scholarship, I was able to complete my enrollment for the graduate gemologist program and buy my instruments for the remaining courses.
Wonderful. So I'm curious just a little bit about GIA and the impact it had on you. And I do know that you're very passionate about mentorship and you mentor students right now. So tell me a little bit about that and what you're doing.
So I understand it. If you're someone like myself who doesn't have a background, a family legacy background in gemology, it can be very hard to navigate this industry, navigate the business part of it. And also, if you didn't spend your life around gems and jewelry, it can be a bit intimidating when you're learning about it, because it is a big science background field. So mentoring is very important to me because people have questions. They're intimidated sometimes by the curriculum. They don't quite understand things. And so someone who has been through the courses and been through the program is more approachable, I think, to them and less intimidating than maybe reaching out to someone in the industry who has been there forever. So people tend to, as we know, be attracted to things that they're comfortable with.
Perfect. Are you mentoring anybody right now?
Yes, I have a roster of mentees. In fact, several of my mentees have graduated to become graduate gemologists, which is amazing. And we just touch base on occasion. And I do have a couple of people who are still in the process of getting their GGs, but I mentor people from all over the globe. So if someone reaches out to me and I have the capacity, then I do devote myself to mentoring because I do want to give back. Women's Jewelry Association was very instrumental in my obtaining a GG with their support, their financial support. So this is my way of giving back.
I love that. I love that. I mean, mentorship is very dear to my heart as well. And I love to talk to people who are also doing the same as I am.
Mhm.
What is your most important or key professional mentor that you've had in your life?
So my mentor actually does not is not in this industry. My mentor is a woman from Philadelphia who has a program called the Evalua House, and she mentors historically marginalized and underrepresented girls of color in the Philadelphia area. So I volunteered for her for several years, and I was an ambassador for her organization. And she's actually my mentor, but her advice, just even though she's not in the industry, she's a former fashion model, and she also does image consulting. She has a lot of good advice, because fashion and jewelry are kind of, they're not the same industry, but they're luxury industries. So a lot of the players are, I don't want to say the same. It's the same kind of environment.
That makes sense. It's very parallel. Is there any one key moment or aha moment or key element that this mentor guided you that really made a difference in your life?
She stressed the importance, we're both women of color, and she stressed the importance of taking up space, being the only one in a space, which has happened to her a lot, when she was modeling, and then it has happened and continues to happen to me. And just knowing that you belong there, and if other people are uncomfortable with your presence, you have to stick it out, because you're making a difference, you're representing, you're changing people's perception of what it's like to see someone like yourself in this space. And it's important to stay there and take up your space in that area, wherever you are. Take up the full space.
I love that because I think every environment, any work environment, any professional career environment, even just in your personal life, where you get the most back is when you're mixing with people of all different races. So I think that
Yes.
that's wonderful.
I would say 40% of my mentees don't look like me. And I don't discriminate, for lack of a better word. Whoever reaches out, I don't reach out to mentees. Mentees come to me and they ask to be mentored. And the fact that people who don't look like me reach out to me, I think it's important for me to give back. I certainly can't be discriminatory in those practices, because I am an advocate for DEI myself. So I also have to practice what I preach. So the fact that someone reaches out to me that doesn't look like me, I actually embrace that.
Oh, I love that. I think that's wonderful. So actually, this kind of goes right into my next question, which is, I know you are co-founder of Black and Jewelry Coalition, and I just want to know how that got started and how did you get involved in that?
So I'm going to go back a little bit to maybe 2018, I think it was. I was at a Women's Jewelry Association event in New York, and there were a group of Black females there who, I think there were maybe 6 or 7 of us. We gathered for a picture because we weren't well represented in that space either. The numbers were very low. And when we saw each other, we were like so happy, like, oh my God. So we took a picture together. So that happened years ago. And then a lot of those same women that were in that picture, there were a lot of conversations going around in May of 2020 during the time of George Floyd's murder and racial unrest and social awakening. A lot of conversations in the industry about the lack of representation, opportunities, and access in our particular industry. And one of those women in the picture called me and said to me, listen, we're having discussions, it was just a meeting of minds. It really wasn't supposed to turn into what it turned into. Just people venting and just looking for support and looking for comfort and all that was going on, and noticing that in this industry, there is not a lot of diversity, equity, or inclusion. So we kept meeting maybe even more than once a week. Like, we've been meeting now for 2 years every week, at least once a week or more. But that's how it started. So there were a group of us. There were 8 of us, and we just talked every week about how could we make an impact and how could we make a difference in our industry and what could we do. And that's how we formed.
I think that's great. So it kind of, I see two threads here. One is I feel like DEI has been a part of you for a very long time, almost starting with your mentor. And then also just the Women's Jewelry Association and how that brought the group of you together to then form this other association, which I think is just great.
Yeah, that actually I never thought of it that way, but you're right. The Women's Jewelry Association did bring most of us together. But we didn't really know each other. We came together for that
Right.
picture. I think only 2 or 3 people knew each other in the picture, which is strange. But that just also underscored the fact that there are not enough of us in the industry, but there are a lot of us in the industry and we can't find each other. So our organization also is a hub where people can meet one another and gain support or share ideas or just have someone to talk to about common interests and common experiences, because this is a tough industry, regardless of what your race or gender is to begin with. It's very insular. But then when you're an outsider or an outlier, which people of color in the United States are typically not in this industry.
Right, right. So I find it as a connection. You're making connections by starting this organization. You're able to connect with the group that you started with, but also to grow it to be bigger. And for other people who maybe are not aware of it, to become aware of it and also join. So I think that's just wonderful.
Thank you. Yes, we have members from all over the world, and our members are not just Black people. We have a lot of allies, and we have a lot of members who are interested in seeing change, and they're interested in diversity because a lot of people, a lot of smart people know that diversity is good for business.
Yes, exactly.
So, and diversity doesn't just mean diverse in race; it means diverse in a lot of different things. One thing I like to remind people is that Black and Jewelry Coalition is in the same space that the Women's Jewelry Association was in when it first started, where women weren't in this space, in the jewelry space, the way they are now. And so we are having a similar type of experience.
Wonderful. I think that's great. That's just wonderful. So I'm going to go back into a little bit about your personal life, your balance between your personal life, your work life. I did not realize that you also have a full-time job as a business administrator at University of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And you own your own business as a gemologist. I'm just wondering, how do you balance all of these items that you have, and you have a family as well?
Yeah, so my full-time job, I get up very early. Even before the pandemic, I used to get to work between 6 and 6:30 every day because my kids used to catch the school bus. So I was always trying to be home when they were home from school. So I always had this really different type of schedule, which they allowed me the flexibility to do that. And then during the pandemic, typically most things that I do that don't involve my full-time day job, I typically do after 3 p.m. So if there's a meeting with me, it's usually after 3 p.m. Or I always ask people, can we meet at lunch? Or I have to take my lunch at 11. I might have to take my lunch at 10. It depends, because sometimes, as you know, we're on international calls and webinars. So, you have to go with the flow. Everybody's not going to stop for EST time. So my gemology career, though, is not as robust as I would like for it to be. I don't do any appraisals anymore. I was doing them for a short time, but I found that I wasn't able to balance that as much as I would like. It can be the people who wanted to hire me wanted me to either be all in or not in. And because it wasn't a good fit for me financially, with benefits and the thing, like, because I have 2 kids in college, I had to let that go. So I don't do any appraising, maybe for friends or whatever, but that part has stopped for me. So most of my time after 3 p.m. is devoted to my advocacy for Black and Jewelry Coalition and also for Women's Jewelry Association, because I'm on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee with the New York City Metro chapter.
So even though you're not doing the gemology as much anymore, you still filled up that space with some other initiatives, which I think is great. There was one thing that I was really interested about, and I've been meaning to ask this of you for a while, actually, and that's your work with the law enforcement and as an expert to identify gems and jewelry. Is there any cases that you, for something that you identified, that you broke the case wide open or you solved a case?
So you're not allowed to talk about those kinds of things. But
Let's talk generalities.
I can be general about one thing. So there was a ring found at a scene, and so it was mangled, you know. But I was able to see a serial number, and I was able to the maker's mark. So I was able to tell law enforcement, okay, this is the store that the person that this ring came from, I should say, because you know there's a secondhand market. So you also have to be very careful and advise people, even though the serial number and the maker's mark says it came from this store, that might not be the original owner. So it's a start, but it doesn't mean that that's the owner it came from. So when I did see that that particular officer again, he told me that they were able to reunite that ring with that person, and that person was doing fine now. So that was a nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
I just think that must be so fascinating when you get pulled into cases like that.
Yeah, it's you know, it's not always a happy ending, you know, sometimes, but I'm glad I can help out and sometimes reunite people with their pieces.
Hi, El Hill here. Do you want to learn how to get on the phone with any buyer that you want to work with without an introduction or a referral? Click to get the downloadable that we've made for you that you can start using right away and will be really useful for your business and growing your revenue.
Now, I see you all over social media platforms. How do you create interesting content, and how do you keep up with remaining present and visible?
That's so funny that people, I mean, when I've been traveling a lot this year, as probably you have, you know, travel is back. So I'm always surprised when I meet people and they know me, they know Mr. Chow, they know my dog. Some of these people I don't know, because in my mind, I'm not that visible on social media. I don't have a lot of followers. I don't have a lot of engagement, yet people know me, they know my dog. My kids don't allow me really to put them on social media that much. They have their own lives and they don't want to be bothered with it. But I'm happy that people see me and see my content and get value from it. So that's good to hear that someone such as yourself is actually saying that. So I'm going to continue on, because sometimes I feel like giving up. The algorithm, you're never going to compete with algorithm. I mean, it's a computer. It doesn't get tired. It has no feelings. You know, it's a beast. So what I do is I make sure that my content is valuable. I try to put I put a lot of research in it. I try not to be inflammatory, and I try to answer questions and, you know, educate people as much as I'm able to. So I just think of things that I'm interested in, or things that I've read about recently. I do a lot of reading, a lot of research, and I may write about things and say, oh, well, this looks interesting. Let me just write about this. I think that's how I came to the attention of one of my employers. Well, I do freelance for Rappaport. So I think that's how I came under their radar.
Wonderful. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, first of all, confession. I dropped out of college when I was 17 years old. I graduated college early and I hated it because, you know, the pressure was back then when I was in college, was to get just to do what you're told, you know, pretty much like this is the path you're going to take and you're good at math, so you should be an accountant. Yes, I am good at math, but I didn't really enjoy it. What I would have told my 18-year-old self was to become a geologist and then become a gemologist. So, but just not knowing that gemology was a scientific field to begin with. This is why I go into the high schools and the middle schools and talk to these youth programs to let them know about these fields, these STEM fields that are in our industry, because that's the person that I wanted in front of me when I was that age.
Oh, I agree with that. When you begin getting your GG, you don't realize how much science is behind it until you start getting into the classes.
Of course, yeah. I discovered that early on. I'm like, oh my God, this is a STEM field, which you know. And so when I go in front of the youth groups, one of the first things the educators say to me is, why do we want you in here talking about jewelry? That's retail. Everyone associates it with retail. But when I explain to them the science behind it, I only have to give them one or two examples. They're all in after they hear that. They're like, oh, wow, I had no idea.
What's one thing about being a gemologist that almost no one agrees with you about?
Oh, the value of the gems. You know, when you're doing appraisals, you're managing, basically you're managing people's expectations about what they have or what they don't have. So I do get a lot of pushback from people who were told about what they had. Like they'll have a ring and, their great grandmother brought it over from wherever, and it's been in the family for 1,000 years, and everybody told them it was this priceless emerald, and it's a piece of glass. So a lot of times, the value of things, it's hotly contested with people who have preconceived ideas about what they have. So that's something that is not my favorite part of being a gemologist. Or as women in any industry, if you're an expert at something, people second guess you because you're a woman. And so there are a lot of female gemologists now, but it's still looked upon as a male dominated field.
That is true. That is true. If you could give me 3 productivity hacks or underrated tools that you use as a gemologist, what would they be?
One is an otoscope. So an otoscope is the instrument that goes in, that the doctors use to look in your ear. That is an amazing tool. The light that's emitted from there it doesn't heat up. So it's perfect for looking at gems, getting into crevices and corners. You can use it with a microscope or a loupe. I love an otoscope for that. That's one hack. Another hack it's not really a hack because it was designed for what it is, but I love the Pickup Media gem light box for photographing and doing videos. Because as you know, gems and jewelry are notoriously hard to capture. And so it does all the work for you. And of course you have to, make adjustments and get your angles right and your focus and all of that. But I don't want to call it a hack, but it kind of is a hack. But I love the photo light box, and they have a portable one, which is not a light box, but it clips on your cell phone when you're traveling.
Okay. So if you could have coffee with anybody in the jewelry industry, alive or past, who would it be and why?
Ooh, Harry Winston.
Good answer.
Yeah, the stories. Oh my God. And just if he would allow me to, sit in like behind the scenes and just behold some of the gems. Also, I got another one right now who is alive, and that's Dr. Jeffrey Post at the Smithsonian. I am dying to get to the Smithsonian behind the scenes and look at some of the specimens and gems they have, but just also to do a tour, like a selfie kind of tour for a lot of the kids that can't get to the Smithsonian. I want them to see like all the treasures that are there in the U.S. Believe it or not, a lot of kids can't get to the Smithsonian. That's sad. So doing something like that and letting them know also that this is a potential career for them. They could be a geologist, a gemologist, a physicist, because a lot of physicists work with diamonds and they're not just for gems and jewelry. So Dr. Post and Harry Winston.
Wonderful answers. And I love that you gave me more than one. This is kind of goes on another question that I had already asked, but maybe you might have a different answer. But it's on the same theme. What is a common myth about being a gemologist?
People think you're a jeweler, that you make jewelry. So when you say gemologist, you get the blinks, like people don't know what it is. But then they say, oh, you're a jeweler. people think you're a jeweler, and I'm like, no, a jeweler is something different, and jeweler has more than one meaning also, but gemologist has one meaning, and so that is one of the most common things. People think you make jewelry or sell jewelry.
Okay, so I'm curious about an experience or a lesson that you learned from past work that you would say was surprisingly helpful in informing you in what you do now.
I work with a lot of international populations at University of Penn because I work with postdoctoral researchers that come from all over the world, and I consider them my clients, even though they're postdoctoral researchers. They're people that I serve, and so being a good listener and trying to put yourself in their place. People coming from different backgrounds or from far away to work on a common, I don't want to say problem. Research is research. Okay. So, working on a common project and just knowing that people come, this is where the diversity comes in. People come with different ideas, different methodologies, different solutions, just being open to that and just being able to take that and process it and then solve whatever the issue is that you have. That's been good training for me at the University of Penn. I've been there for over 20 years, and it's very helpful in what I'm doing now.
Well, you and I both have the same thought process on that. So I'm very big advocate of bringing together many different types of people, and you always will get a different type of answer. And that's really where the best work comes out of, is when you bring these different groups of people together.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And so, again, diversity doesn't just always mean like different cultures and races. It just could also be different, positions in the industry. Like our board is diverse because we're all from different parts of the industry. I'm the only gemologist on the board, but then there's people who have expertise in marketing and finance and law. And so these are all in design, so these are all different ideas that makes our board wonderful.
No, I love that. I think that's just a wonderful, and you can see that theme throughout a lot of your life and in the answers that you're giving me, which is just great. I just love it. If you had to write a book tomorrow, what would you write about?
I would write about.
And it doesn't have to be about gemology. It can be about whatever.
Well, it's interesting because I would write about something that my mentor shared with me, and we talked about this in the beginning, about being in a space and taking up as much space as possible because you belong there. You made it there, you belong there. I was recently made, I don't want to say made to feel, because that means that the intent was there. I don't know if the intent was there, but I was at an event that was, well, first of all, it was very male heavy. So there may have been, I think there might have been 100 people there. Maybe 7 or 8 were female. So there was that. But then I was the only Black person there, because there were other people of color there. And I was getting the curious looks, people, I don't know if they were uncomfortable. That wasn't really my problem if they were uncomfortable that I was there, but it was certainly, curious looks. And then someone actually did say to me that, how did you get in here? Basically, they didn't say that, but they may as well have said it. And so I had my reason why I was there, and so they asked me 3 times and I did not answer them. I mean, I was there, I had my name tag on for what I was doing, what I was doing there, but they wanted to know how I learned about it, who gave me the invitation. And as women, or just anybody who is not part of a majority population, people are going to question your appearance, your role,
your expertise, your
expertise,
right.
Everything. They're going to question. I'm almost like a unicorn, which I that's fine. Like, I own that, and I know that I'm in a space that's not something that people are used to, but that's not my problem. And so I will not shrink myself or apologize for my presence. What I'm there to do is represent, and I'm there to give you an experience and something to walk away with, because my being there is going to benefit you when you walk away. When you interact with me, when you leave me, you're going to leave better than when you first got there, or when I first got there. So that's my role and my goal when I'm in spaces that I'm not typically, or people that look like me are not typically welcome in or expected to be in.
Right. Well, no, I love how you chose to deal with the situation. I think is just says a lot about who you are. And yes, I can understand having somebody say something like that to you and how what they really mean by it. So
I mean, they were clear about what they meant, and they had no qualms about asking me 3 times. They wanted an answer. Like, how did you get in here? Talk to the people who arranged it. Ask them. Like, I don't have to justify my presence here to you.
Right.
I didn't break in. I have a name tag that says it says who I'm here with. Like, so if you can't get all the information you need, that's what the name tags are for. Then make it up.
Right.
I don't need to tell you why I'm here.
Yes,
I'm not going to justify my presence here. So, that also happened last week. I was in New York. We did a tour, a 47th Street stroll with some of the BIJC members, and we were 10 deep, and we had our host with us, and everyone looked like me except for the host in the group. And one of the building, I think he was the engineer. He had on a white shirt and black pants. He looked like a building engineer person. He came right up to me and asked me, I don't know how he knew I don't know, maybe because I walked in back of everyone. So the host was in the front and I was leading. I don't know. But he walked up to me and he said, what group is this? Like, what are you guys doing here? I mean, he just came right out and said it. Like, and I said, oh, we're with the Black and Jewelry Coalition. It's as simple as that. Like, I wasn't going to give him the acronym. I want you to know why I'm here. We had an appointment. We just came from our appointment. I told him who we were there to see. We had just finished visiting that space. And people question your place in the space that they're not used to seeing you in. And so you have to be ready to, stand firm in that space because you belong there.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to be ready to speak up when you're given a platform about the things that you believe in. And I can talk about this. And Elle was present, and she may or may not remember. Maybe it didn't impact her because Elle is, she's very open-minded. So to her, it might not have seemed like anything. But we were at an event, not an event. We were at a program maybe 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. And the professor asked about the next session next year, what type of topics do you want to see? One of the case studies that we did was on Microsoft, and the CEO of Microsoft made a comment about diversity and inclusion. And, he said, that's a tough one. And so if you want to start practicing on tackling tough topics, try that one because it's tough, and it makes people uncomfortable, but a lot of things are uncomfortable, but that's a good one to tackle. So I quoted him and I said, I'd like to see more discussions about diversity and inclusion. And I could hear people shifting in their seats. Some people were a little bit uncomfortable. They probably didn't want me to say that because it made them feel uncomfortable. But what kind of person would I be if that's my work, my life's work that I'm doing, and I can't speak up about it in a public forum? Then I don't deserve to be doing the work.
Well, and if you don't have those difficult conversations, then how are we ever going to make progress?
We're not. So you're right. Like, you have to have the conversation, and it doesn't have to be uncomfortable all the way through the conversation, because the way that I have the conversation with people, they tend up thanking me. I'm not here to make you feel uncomfortable. You may have that discomfort because no one wants to discuss it, but it doesn't have to be something that's negative. In fact, it's a positive conversation.
Yeah, wonderful. What I learned a lot about you. What I see is a thread of mentorship, DEI, being a mother, being able to go back and learn something new, take a different path. And everything that you said here today, I think will be very helpful to our listeners. So, Adrianne Sanogo, Thank you so much.
If you like that video, you're going to love the next one. It's full of our expertise and tips on diamonds, gemstones, and jewelry, growing your top line revenue, and business strategy. Just click on the link, subscribe, and hit the bell button so that you'll be notified of our next videos, and give us a like. Bye for now.